Thinking this man was just a week-old farmer, they snuck onto his farm and killed his loyal dog. But what they didn't know was that the man they mocked was once a Marine sharpshooter. And now he was about to show them that the older the ginger, the spicier it gets. In Mexico, a young boy named Miguel lived with his mother, Rosa. One peaceful afternoon, as Rosa was preparing a meal in their small home, she received an unexpected call from her brother, Carlos. His voice was frantic. Carlos said that a powerful drug cartel was hunting him because he had stolen a large sum of money from them. Desperate and afraid, he begged his sister to find the money he had hidden and leave Mexico as soon as possible before it was too late. Just a few minutes after the call ended, the cartel caught Carlos. The leader, Mauricio, searched Carlos's phone and found Rosa's name in the recent contacts. That was enough for him to conclude she was involved. Without hesitation, he ordered Carlos to be executed on the spot. Meanwhile, across the border in Arizona, a former Marine named Jim lived alone on a barren piece of land near the US-Mexico border. He spent most of his time tending to his ranch and was always vigilant for anyone crossing the border illegally. Whenever he saw someone sneaking across, he would immediately report it to the Border Patrol. One day, while checking on his cattle, Jim spotted a group of people stealthily crossing the desert, so he quickly contacted the patrol to report them. However, out of curiosity, he decided to watch them from a distance. A short while later, he saw a man being left behind with a severely injured leg. No one in the group turned back to help him. They abandoned him in the middle of the desert. Jim radioed the man's location to the patrol and then quietly returned home. Back at the ranch, Jim faced other troubles. A bank agent came to remind him of his overdue payments. He hadn't paid a dime in 6 months, and the agent warned that if the situation didn't improve, the bank would soon put his land up for auction. Jim had been in a financial crisis ever since his wife's long and serious illness, which had depleted all their savings and left him with a mountain of debt. Jim pleaded for more time, saying he just needed a chance to start over. The agent finally said he had 90 days to sort things out, or they would come to foreclose on the property. Jim then tried to find a job, but the manager shook his head, saying the current position wasn't suitable for someone his age. However, he promised to try to find another job for Jim next month. Unwilling to give up, Jim drove to a local cattle buyer, hoping to sell his remaining few cows. But the price he was offered was too low, enough to cover only a small fraction of his debt. Even if he sold all his livestock, he wouldn't be able to manage. Exhausted and dejected, Jim ended his long day by stopping at a nearby bar, hoping a few drinks might ease his stress. The bartender noticed his unusual fatigue and called Jim's stepdaughter, Sarah, who worked for the Border Patrol, to report that something was wrong with him. Sarah arrived and sat down next to Jim. They spoke softly for a while, and eventually, Jim confessed that he was drowning in debt and about to lose his home. As the night wore on, he tried to order another drink, but Sarah stopped him and drove him back to his ranch. The next day, on the other side of the border, Rosa and Miguel were still on the run. As they neared the US-Mexico border, they saw the cartel's vehicles speeding toward them. So, they quickly crawled through a small hole in the tall steel fence. Just then, Jim was nearby and spotted the mother and son crossing illegally. In her fear, Rosa begged him not to report them to the authorities. Jim hesitated, wary but also troubled. He advised her to seek help from the Border Patrol and started to take out his phone to call on their location. Just a few minutes later, a group of armed men led by Mauricio himself appeared, demanding that Jim hand over the mother and son. Realizing they were in mortal danger, Jim made an instant decision to protect them. Gunshots rang out almost immediately. Jim returned fire, taking down one of the attackers, and quickly sped away in his truck. Mauricio immediately squeezed through the hole in the fence and managed to climb into the bed of Jim's truck. He reached through the window to overpower Jim, but Jim swerved sharply, throwing him off. When he discovered that the man Jim had killed was his own brother, the rage in Mauricio's heart erupted more fiercely than ever before. From this point on, his goal was no longer to retrieve the stolen money, but to get revenge. While fleeing, Jim realized that Rosa had been shot. The severe wound made her breathing faint, her voice intermittent and weak. Mustering her last bit of strength, Rosa handed Jim a small folded piece of paper with an address, saying it belonged to her relatives in Chicago. She begged him to take Miguel there, warning that if the cartel found the boy, they would kill him instantly. After speaking, Rosa took her last breath. A while later, the police and paramedics arrived at the scene. Sarah, after hearing about the shooting, informed Jim that Miguel would be held at the station overnight and then transferred to a foster care center the next morning. The following morning, Jim woke up in his pickup truck near a border checkpoint, with his loyal dog Jackson by his side. Looking around, he recognized a familiar vehicle parked on the other side of the border. It was the same car the cartel had used the day before. In the cabin, he found a bag that Rosa had left behind. When he opened it, he was stunned to see it was full of stacks of cash. Seeing the bloodstains on the bag, the memory of the moment Rosa died in front of him came flooding back vividly. He couldn't just use the money to solve his own problems. He also had the responsibility to fulfill Rosa's dying wish. Remembering her plea, Jim decided to turn the truck around and go back to find Miguel. When he arrived, an officer told him that Miguel was about to be handed over to his relatives in Mexico. He couldn't let this happen. Jim asked the officer for a few minutes to speak with Miguel alone. The man agreed and led him into the room. As soon as the door closed, Jim acted. He gently led Miguel down the hallway and snuck out the backside door without being seen. Outside, Mauricio stood in the parking lot across the border, silently watching Jim's truck disappear with the boy he was hunting. In that moment, he decided to cross into the US, hunt them down, and kill them at any cost. Meanwhile, Jim drove Miguel back to his ranch. He went inside to pack a few clothes, grab a few weapons and what little money he had left, and prepared to leave. But when he returned to the truck, he found Miguel was gone. At the same time, Mauricio and his accomplices began to cross illegally into the US. A Border Patrol agent spotted them using fake passports, but upon realizing they were dangerous cartel members, he was too scared to intervene and let them pass. Back on Jim's side, he quickly found Miguel not far from the ranch. It turned out the boy had run away out of fear. Jim warned him that if the cartel caught him, they would kill him without hesitation. The two quickly set off toward Chicago, following the address Rosa had left. As the truck sped through the desolate landscape, Jim tried to talk to the boy to reassure him, explaining that they were on their way to a safe place. But Miguel remained silent, his eyes heavy with the pain of losing his mother. Jim thought perhaps the boy didn't understand what he was saying. Meanwhile, after successfully crossing into US territory, Mauricio drove straight to Jim's ranch. He broke down the door, ransacked every room until he found a few credit card receipts and an old Marine Corps insignia. That was all he needed to understand everything. Jim was not just a farmer, but a well-trained Marine, meaning he was facing an extremely dangerous adversary. Mauricio pocketed the insignia and ordered his men to burn the house down. Just a few minutes later, the entire ranch was engulfed in flames. At this point, Jim stopped at a gas station to refuel and went into the store to buy a paper map to navigate the way to Chicago. Then he called Sarah. She was furious that he had taken Miguel on his own and informed him that his ranch had been completely burned down. Hearing this, Jim just stood there in sad silence and hung up. Meanwhile, using the credit card receipts he had found, Mauricio began contacting cartel members operating within the US to coordinate the pursuit. After a period of silence, Miguel suddenly spoke in English. Jim was stunned, realizing the boy had understood him all along. Miguel confessed that he didn't want to be here, didn't want anything to do with America. Jim tried to calm him down, saying he was only doing what was best for him, that they were on their way to meet his family in Chicago. However, Jim's use of a credit card at the gas station had inadvertently revealed their location. Just minutes later, Mauricio received the alert and immediately rushed there with his men. Upon arrival, he calmly walked into the gas station and asked the cashier which way Jim had gone. The girl refused to answer, saying she didn't know anything. Without a moment's hesitation, Mauricio drew his gun and shot her dead on the spot. After reviewing the security camera footage from the store, he saw that Jim was heading east and continued the chase. Meanwhile, Jim's truck suddenly broke down on the road. He took it to a nearby garage, but the mechanic said the shop was closed for the day. With no other choice, Jim took Miguel to a small diner nearby. For the first time since they met, the two truly talked. They introduced themselves properly, and Jim asked why those men were hunting him. Miguel explained that his uncle had gotten into big trouble with the cartel, and now he and his mother were being hunted because of it. When Jim asked about his father, Miguel quietly said his father had died before he was born. That night, they slept in Jim's old pickup truck. The next morning, Jim woke up in a panic to find Miguel and the dog Jackson gone. But just a few minutes later, he breathed a sigh of relief when he saw them both return, Miguel's arms full of groceries from a nearby store.